Welcome back, everybody. It is the big thing. It's UAP Tuesdays, and we got a big one here today. Pun intended, I guess. I found out not too long ago that Thomas Jane, you know him from Expanse, you know him from Punisher, Boogie Nights, Hung, the list goes on and on and on and on. Well, I found out a little while ago that he was also very much into the UAP topic, disclosure, like all those things. And I'd always, eventually I'd love to get him on. And I never even made a play to try to get him. I said, eventually, as the show grows. And then I got an email not too long ago that said that he wanted to come on the show and talk. And I was like, are you kidding? 100%. Sign me up. When can we do it? And so we were able to coordinate and figure it out. And we made it happen. So that's exactly what happened, is that we talked for quite a while. So I hope that you're joining us because you want to see that conversation. And if so, as always, hit subscribe. Make sure that you do that. We're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers. We also have the Down to Earth Daily UAP News channel also that you can find in the description. So make sure you do that. Comment, click like. It helps tremendously. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, that and more. Before we even go, I want to tell you this too, is that I've been in New York. I've been going back and forth, transferring studios and everything. My energy is the one that I've got to make sure, because we're doing so many different shows. We're doing this, we're doing interviews and that. And like, for example, I got Magic Mind, and I've told you about Magic Mind. And what is it? It's like, it's basically, it's pure energy, man. And it doesn't give you that jittery feel. Hold on, watch this. It just wakes up your mind, hence Magic Mind. And I think I'm moving. I'm able to, the adaptogens and everything that it's got, it makes me, I'm alert. And like I said, I don't like, a lot of times you get these shakes. It has taken me to a place where I can really concentrate, and I've done it before, whether it's stand-up interviews. When I did this interview with Thomas Jane, which is obviously pre-recorded, I had one of them. I had them right now. So when I come back from the intro, after you watch the full interview, you'll see. It has helped tremendously, and I really love Magic Mind. I would suggest you guys check it out. The link is the first thing you see when you see this in Magic Mind. Use our special link there. You get a discount on it, and it's a fantastic way to just kind of, like I said, no shakes, nothing. So get yourself some Magic Mind, but in the meantime, sit back and enjoy. This is Thomas Jane and myself. Comment away. How's it going, everybody? As I mentioned, I'm excited here, man. Look, as you guys know, when I started covering this thing a year ago, kind of fell into it, and my stuff is normally pop culture, movie stuff, movie reviews, TV. And then when I really discovered that documentary on National Geographic about how much the actual pilots and military personnel and all these different people were talking about these things that they've seen in the New York Times article, and I started to get more involved in it. I started to want to approach the normal everyday person wanting to unplug from the matrix, to ask the questions, and you guys have responded to it each and every week. But the other thing that I found that is I've been finding more and more people that are also interested in it and can talk about it. I had Steve Bassett on. We talked to him. We had Danny Sheehan on. We talked to him. We had Tim Gallaudet on. And I recently reached out to someone I've been a fan of for such a long time, and his work in movies and film. And you know him as, for God's sakes, I'm talking to the Punisher, guys. Talking to the Punisher, Boogie Nights. The list goes on and on and on. And I'm excited to talk to this gentleman because of our mutual interest in the UAP phenomenon, the one and only Thomas Jane, ladies and gentlemen. How are you, sir?
Yeah, happy to be here. Really happy to talk to you about this stuff. I guess we sort of have similar trajectories. I too come from the entertainment side of things, and of course, I have a deep love for film and television and storytelling.
Sure.
In all of its forms. Got a little comic book company. We're working on a werewolf book that we're going to put out with Comixology. Probably at the end of the year. My artist is about halfway through right now.
Okay.
But my night job, I guess, for the past 15 years has been as a xenologist, xeno for stranger,
yeah,
or alien.
Yeah.
fascinated with the idea of alien civilizations, alien consciousness. It didn't take long. I too when I first came at this, had no idea the amount of evidence that
Right.
has been slowly accumulating since at least 1947.
Yeah. If not way further.
If not further, yeah, there's some really interesting cases before that,
Yeah.
but after the atomic
Yeah.
explosions, when we started lighting them off like firecrackers, that's probably not a coincidence that at the same time we saw a huge uptick in alien visitation. This was front page news in the early 50s.
Yep.
And all the way up until Project Blue Book was canceled in December of '68.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously the country and the world had a huge interest in this subject, and they demanded answers. I mean, they were really, it was at the beginning, it was almost a cause for panic. In 52, when they flew over the White House in July, over 2 weekends of that year. I mean, after that, it just became a feeding frenzy. The public demanded answers, and events like that eventually, sort of forced the Air Force to create a public program that would look into the matter.
Yeah, it's not unsimilar to what's going on now with like Arrow, right? And it's very, you look at Sean Kirkpatrick and people of that nature, was almost, you wonder if he's going to pull like what happened with Hynek, where Hynek at one point was in that position of no, nothing to see here, and then the more he researched, the more he looked into it, the more he said, I can't in good conscience say that there's nothing going on here. There clearly is something going on here. I think there's a little bit more nefariousness going on with Sean Kirkpatrick personally, but that's me. But
I don't think Kirkpatrick's gonna pull a Hynek, that's for sure. I would be very surprised. But you're right, it's a merry-go-round, and a lot of that's because the government military relies on the short memory of human society. People die. A new generation comes up. They start asking the same questions, demanding the same answers. Yeah. Technology changes. Information becomes much more available to people. So we're seeing a similar sort of inflection point, and we're receiving extremely similar answers, from the military. The Arrow report that came out in March.
Yeah.
The Washington Post basically said that the Arrow concluded that we have no evidence that these are extraterrestrial vehicles, which is a blatant lie.
Right.
If you look into the subject just a little bit, you can see that we have very good evidence.
Well, what do you think about the you think that's kind of a misfire on their part? Because you look at even, 2 days ago when you had at the SALT conference alone, where there's reports of like, hey, look, this is absolutely happening. It has been happening. Yeah. And the Arrow reports seem to want to push people back, going, look, there's nothing to see here. Even yesterday with Tim Burchett, who was speaking to the Secretary of the Department of Energy, and he's saying, look at these things that are flying over. And she's like, they're drones. He's like, I'm not talking about drones. I'm talking about these other things. And Luna pressing her and saying, what about the reverse engineering? And she kept mentioning the DOD report and the Arrow report. Well, they said it's nothing to see here. It seems like everyone is like, it misfired. They try to say, no, that's it now. Nothing to see here. Bye-bye. Like Leslie Nielsen and the Naked Gun sitting here. Yeah. And meanwhile, we're all like, no, there's way more to it.
They don't have another tack that they can take. The government and science as an institution, and science is an institution that relies on the government for its funding, basically. All scientific endeavors require funding. It's an expensive endeavor, no matter what you're looking at in science. No public, money has been allocated to scientists to study this, and for good reason, because science and government have to maintain a kind of plausible deniability, and there's a few reasons for that. I think the interesting to me is that science essentially has a UFO taboo, because as long as they don't look at it, right? They've got plot. They don't know what these things are. They can say we don't know. Okay, and that we may have. It seems like that's how far we've gotten since 2017. Okay, they exist. By the way, we've been here before in American history, but we're here again now where they're going, all right, these things exist, but we don't know what they are. Now, if science were to look into the UFO phenomenon, it's a really good possibility that they would determine that these are extraterrestrial vehicles under intelligent control, right?
You don't think they know, and you don't think that a lot of them know that for sure, and it just kind of.
I don't think that science as an institution is there. There's an embargo on them looking into private scientists in their own time. You know, Dr. James McDonald back in the 60s, who's worked with weather atmospherics. He was a really strong proponent. He looked into it on his own dime and on his own time. Gary Nolan, they're receiving a little bit of funding. It's all private. Avi Loeb is the only guy who's touching the subject, and that's because he's looking for interstellar vehicles or evidence of interstellar vehicles that may have passed near or actually crashed on the Earth, and he's doing that. That's as close as science can get. Yeah. So no, scientists can't look into it because they might resolve into extraterrestrial vehicles, and if they do, then alien intelligence represents another sovereign entity outside of human sovereignty, outside of human purview, outside of our laws, outside of our physics, outside of see, we've built this world with the implicit understanding that we are the arbiters of existence, right? We've built this whole world without even thinking about it. We've got dominance over animals, plants, everything else on the planet. We're the top dog. We make the rules. We decide what's real and what's not. You introduce another intelligence into that equation, and we no longer have control. Right. And government and science, what are they all about?
Control. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's one of the main reasons, like when you listen to David Grush and the things that he said about, and the other things when it comes to what is looked upon as potential catastrophic disclosure, right? And whether or not they think that if other countries disclose, or if there's a leak, because you look at that Schumer and Rounds bill that was essentially gutted, and it looks like there's going to be some movement on that at the end of the year from the reports that are coming out. But you look at some of the things that are said there with that, one of the reasons that they're trying to keep it so controlled, as you say, is that they want to, that they use the excuse that the public wouldn't be able to handle it. And sure. I think to an essence, I think a little bit of that is true, right? And basically because of what you just said, that I do think that there is that the overall religion and how what does that mean for religion overall? What does that mean?
Yeah. It throws a spanner into the works. I mean, the Vatican has come out a couple of times over the past few years and has said, well, we accept alien intelligence because they haven't been fallen. They're not, they don't consider that these aliens, if they're out there, they're okay because they haven't fallen. So they don't need to be baptized.
Right. Right.
This is an interesting,
it is. And but it's also, it does, the question starts to, what do they really know? What is really out there? And as you mentioned, to where we know about things that were documented in the 40s, but if you listen to some reports, that potentially the belief is that whatever these things are, they've been here for longer than we have. It's with the possibility.
Absolutely.
And I think that it kind of, so my first question to you that I really want to get into is, in your overall belief, obviously you believe that it is alien life form, it's NHI. Do you believe more so in the idea that it's light travel, or that it is the other thing that was posed with interdimensional potential portals, things of that nature? Do you have a theory on that?
I think that the subject it's a slippery slope. The entire subject is a very slippery slope, because the word alien, we can fit so much into that black box, so you have cottage industries that have popped up over the decades that exploit one or another possibility that is, connected to aliens. You've got, the Pleiadians who are here to bring peace on Earth. You've got the gray aliens who are doing a hybrid abduction program. You've got channeling. You've got consciousness, telepathy. I mean, psi phenomenon. So I think when approaching the subject, it's best to always try to adhere to Occam's razor and say, without any other evidence, the simplest explanation is probably true. The simplest explanation is that these are civilizations, societies with technology, consciousness, that they've evolved on different planets, and that they've figured out how to uncouple mass from gravity. And we don't know what gravity is. We don't know what mass is. We don't know what light is. We don't know what energy is. I mean, we don't know what consciousness is, and we don't know what matter is. Okay, we don't know what magnetism is. Sorry,
I said, but we think we do.
We can explain these things. We can explain what they do, and that gives us some sort of control over them.
Right.
But the truth is, there's so much that we don't know. And aliens, on the one hand, if you're society-wise, they kind of throw that in our face, and they go, "Wow, you guys have figured a lot of shit out that we haven't." That doesn't make us feel good or look very good. Right. We like to look good. We like to look like we're in control, like we're worthy of contact. If scientists used to say, of course there's no aliens, because if there were, they would have come down and talked to the scientists. Duh.
Right. And meanwhile, we could be looked in the same way than you're driving down if you're driving down a road in a farm and you see a bunch of cows, you're like, oh, look at the cows. You don't stop and talk to the cows.
They don't talk to the cows, but they are here for a reason, or several reasons. They're not. It's not a vacation spot. They're here. The more you look into it, and this took me a long time to wrap my head around. I thought, well, maybe there's, maybe one or two alien species who are found us and seem to have taken this great interest in us over the last 80 years. It's not true. It's all evidence points to the fact that there's dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of different species, races who have at least visited here once.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. And BetterHelp, as you know, we've had people on the show and talked about Roxy. Roxy talks about it all the time. We've helped many times over, and it's helpful to people in my household and other things. It's been a very, very big benefit overall. We all carry around different stress, whether it's big and small. You can keep your emotions bottled up, but the problem is, and I can tell you personally, it can affect you negatively. Therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest and figure out how to work through whatever is weighing you down. If you are thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's online, and it's designed to be convenient, it's flexible, and it's suited to your schedule. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/BigThing today, and you'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/BigThing. Now, I have I've raved about Rocket Money forever. And you got to stop wasting money on things that you don't like and things you don't use. Cancel those unwanted subscriptions and you go to rocketmoney.com/thing. I have been using Rocket Money for, I can't even tell you, way before they were even a sponsor. And it's great because it'll give me updates. It'll tell me when I have big bills that are coming up that I need to pay. And just if there's certain things like these are subscriptions that you've signed up for that you don't need, you don't use them. Do you want us to cancel them? And they'll cancel you for you. They give you a good breakdown. I'm not the most organized person in the world, but I'll tell you, through Rocket Money, I have been, and I love it. And that's why they've been with us for so long. So once again, go to rocketmoney.com. JaneTalks.com/thing and sign up today, guys. It is amazing and you'll love it. I promise you. It is mind blowing to me, especially for somebody, because how long have you been following this topic now?
15
years. Okay. So for me, where I've always had a curious, interest in it, but it was my other show that I was doing. I was on Collider, and that's when the New York Times article broke, and we saw the
Right.
footage, and we are like, wow. And like I said, I always had the interest, but it was about a year ago where I was watching something, and I saw that 5-part series,
Right.
and it had Leslie Kane and James Fox, and it had all these people in it, and I started to pay attention to it a little bit more. And then the David Grush stuff happened, just so it felt like
Yeah.
it was supposed to happen. Like I was supposed to find it.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think that's coincidence. I really don't. And when those things happen, and I asked you when you got into it because of a very similar question that they just kind of asked Carl Nell, because when I hear you speak about it, you're so convinced and obviously very well educated on it. What is it, and how did you get to the place where you're just convinced? Is it something that you've seen? Is it something that you've heard, the people that you talk to? How are you, a very successful actor and someone that could have just said, look, I want to be the Hollywood big shot. I don't need to worry about aliens. I don't need to worry about this stuff. Like, how do you get into a place where you're like, no, I definitively know this, and this?
Well, I had no intention of sort of making my interest in the subject public until recently, when I was asked to speak at Contact in the Desert, and I thought this is an opportunity that I shouldn't say no to.
Yeah.
The opportunity arose. Some of the researchers had read some of the book that I'd written. It's called A Human's Guide to Visiting Aliens. I'm editing it now, but I sent it off to some folks that know what they're talking about, and they responded very favorably to the book and asked me to speak. And I said yes, because I feel like this is a subject that we desperately need right now. I do feel like there's a sort of a slow disclosure that's been happening. You can call it a soft disclosure that's been happening over the over quite a while, but especially recently since 2017. I think that Richard Dolan says that he believes that there might be two factions inside the Pentagon, or the powers that be.
Yeah.
One faction wants this information to come out, and the other is resisting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the resistors are having the most control right now. But times will change. This will come out. This will become part of our reality, because it's reality. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the reality that we live in. And if you ask me how I know that, the answer is all three. I have had personal experience.
Really?
I have talked to a lot of experts, and mostly I've read the history and all of the different researchers that have dedicated their time and their life to this subject, and they've put what they've found down in books. These books are a record of the phenomenon. Especially since before 2017, that record will become ever more valuable as we move into this subject. We're going to want to understand the history of the subject much, much more. And so you'll find more and more people starting to take a look at the historic phenomenon and learn from it. We don't know much, but there's pieces that we can learn and pieces that we can put together, mostly through repetition, because one anecdotal sort of story of a farmer, seeing a silver disc or an egg-shaped craft land in their lavender field, and little beings coming out, and him feeling like he was frozen and couldn't move as they ran around and picked some lavender and hopped back into their craft and took off, which really happened in France. One story is just a story, but when you start hearing it over and over and over and over, hundreds, thousands of times, and then these stories all have common components, right? So you start hearing the same things. You start descriptions of the same technologies over and over again, not just in America, all over the world, and for 80 years. Then you start to go, maybe there's something to this. And then you look into the Leslie Kean's book, and you start reading about pilots and generals, and then you read Richard Dolan's UFOs and the National Security State, where he basically, with two 800-page volumes, goes through the entire history of the phenomenon from the government, Air Force, military perspective, and everything that we have on radar, all of the different statements that dignitaries and officials and pilots and people, who have a lot to lose.
Sure.
Why would they be saying this stuff? They can't all be lying or deluded. That would be insane.
Well, especially the people who are working in the nuclear facilities in like the late 60s. They're all, I mean, these are people who were in charge of, were putting in charge of nuclear weapons, and
who signed affidavits, who really wanted, like, whatever happens, this needs to be in the record somewhere because it's important. Okay.
Well, then why, Thomas? So why are the main? Because I agree with you. You hear all this stuff. You hear the same stories from people, again, like a Carl Nell, from these pilots that are, they've done the vetting on them. You look, even though they tried to discredit Grush, they couldn't do it. All these different people that have these high profiles. Why? And this is the big thing that happens on my show, what I try to cover all the time, and that is, what is this I guess there's no coverage from the mainstream media. You have the News Nation that is doing a pretty good job of it, right? You got the Hill, and then you'll get stuff on the internet. You'll get maybe CNN and Fox will do little side pieces on their websites. But when you look at the main, like, even if they don't believe it, my thing is, if you have the Senate Majority Leader up there talking about a bill that has, UFO, UAP, it should be reported on, even if you think
you'd think they'd want to cover it, right?
Right. Even if you think he's out of his mind, you say, look what the Senate Majority Leader is doing. The fact that we have people talking to the Department of Energy asking about reverse engineering, how is that not a story? With things that you get, whether it's Biden or Trump going to get ice cream, they cover that, but they don't cover this. And I'm not saying they need to believe it, but why aren't they covering it?
Well, that's a very good point, and it exposes several issues that we're dealing with as a country and as a society in the West right now. And what we're seeing, what's being exposed right now, is the stranglehold that the government and the military has over mainstream media. This has always been apparent, and if you look into it, even just a little bit, you'll find Project Mockingbird. Mockingbird was a CIA program where they basically had entrenched reporters who they could feed information to shape stories, big stories, over the course of American society. It's propaganda, guys, and that we're living in it. When I grew up and went to elementary school, they taught me about how the commies lived in a world of propaganda, and they didn't have free speech, and they couldn't speak their mind, and they were told what to think, and that secret newspapers would put out they'd print up little periodicals and hand them out hand to hand secretly to try to get real information out, and how difficult that was. And we've seen the slow erosion of freedom of the press happening in this country, and aliens, UFOs, the subject exposes that, and so much more than that. There's so many cracks and seams and fissures in Western society will be exposed when we become inured to this subject.
Yeah,
it's dangerous. It's dangerous to the people who are in power, who want to stay in power, who are controlling what we're supposed to think. I mean, look, they're trying to ban. They're doing it. I mean, in Brazil, they're banning social media platforms.
Right.
And this is happening in Canada right now. It's happening in Australia, and it's coming here. Not only,
it's interesting.
The last thing I'll say is, not only this UFO, the study of UFOs qualifies as a kind of militant resistance.
Yeah.
In our society right now. And I guess that's why I'm throwing my hat in the ring, you know?
Well, I think it's a good thing that you are, because I think that even when, so it's because the first time I found out that you were had an interest in it actually was after we had Steve Bassett on our show.
Yeah, he's
And
great.
yeah, he's great. And my co-host and I, we went to lunch with him afterwards, and we were going through it, and your name was on one of the things that he showed us. And I said, well, that's very interesting. I said, and it was funny because I was going to reach out to you to get you, and then we just got lucky and we connected here, because I think that it is important to have your voice out there talking about this as well, because of what you've accomplished. And people go, oh wait, Thomas Jane's talking about this too. And that's, as you said, that's the way our society works also, right? They're like, oh, I know that guy, I recognize that guy. What he believes in it too. But the question that I have in pertaining to that is, yes, that this subject is less taboo than it was 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But
Oh my God.
But it definitely is. But it's still a bit, even when I tell people that I'm covering this stuff, like people who don't get it go, oh, one of my close friends said to me, he's like, but you don't really believe in that stuff, right? I'm like, yeah, I do very much so, because there's what I believe in is that there are lies being told. There's more that we don't know. I don't know about anything else too, because I don't have any proof in it. Do I know what I believe? I know what I hope. I know that I think there's more to consciousness. I think there's more to a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But
it opens up a lot of doors.
It opens up a lot of doors. But with you, do you find, for what you do you find that for someone, you know, if you're talking about this, do you worry that affects anything with your work? Do you find that?
Oh God, I hope not. You know, I hope we're living in a world where, you know, people can talk freely about this kind of thing. I mean, I'm not advocating any political parties or, you know, standing up for any, you know, dubious rights. I think this subject still has an esotericism to it that most people, myself included, before I, you know, dove into this, very much so, we're lived in a surface world. You know, and in the surface world, you know, where you're floating around and you don't have an oxygen tank, you've got flippers and you've got a mask and you've got a snorkel, and you hang around on the surface and you look down. You know, what's interesting, usually it's, you know, women or pretty fish, and that's sort of the whole of our society, you know, where we make money, we have families, we have a highly structured social system that doesn't, there's no room, there's no play, you know, there's no, right now, currency, in my opinion, to the UFO alien sort of question. However, at the same time, more and more people, the light bulb is going off, and you know, and that's going to, like any social phenomenon, starts small and then it exponentially grows, and then it hits a tipping point. We're not at that tipping point yet. You know, we're still kind of howling into the wind.
It's true.
Right now.
But that is why I think that it is important for people like yourself, and the other person who's pretty vocal on it as well is like Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti is very, very much.
Oh, good. Well, that's good to him.
Oh yeah,
well, he's doing all right.
He's doing all right. So he's got a pod. I had the pleasure of running into him at the Critics' Choice Awards. And when I did, and I said to myself, I said, everyone else is asking about the movie, which was great. I'm going straight for the UFO topic. It's the first thing. And I went right to him, and it was right after the jellyfish video had come out from Jeremy Corbell.
Right.
And I started, and everyone was asking him about his movie, and he was excited about it. But Thomas, I got to tell you, when I asked him about the jellyfish video, his eyes went wide, and he's like, "Oh, the jellyfish video." And we started getting into it. We talked about it for like 5 minutes. And he was so excited about it. And I said, that's another guy that should be out there talking about it. And the same reason I said about you, it's because it's like, and when more people, especially of your stature, are out there talking about it, and when you listen to you talk about it, you're very educated on it. You have you back it up. You're not just saying, "Oh, I saw this, I saw that," because this is, I actually had coffee with aliens last week. It's not that. It's more. There's more like fact behind it, and I think that is very important.
Well, it's also where the money is, man. It's I mean that metaphorically, like that. Learning about trying to wrap your mind around whether it's real or not. That's that's up there on the surface. And then once you start digging in, it's incredibly rewarding, because it touches on the deep subjects of humankind. It reaches all the way down into why are we here,
Right.
and it hits every note on the way down to that base note. So it's a fascinating subject, and the main hurdle is sort of opening yourself up to the possibility that this might actually be real. And as science progresses, this becomes more and more less heretical, right?
Right.
Because now we understand that there are trillions of galaxies out there, something like 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. Each of those galaxies has about 200 billion stars. In the universe, there's something like this. These are just estimates. 60 billion Earth-like planets.
Yeah.
In the Milky Way, there's 2 billion Earth-like planets. And Earth-like planets, that might not be the only game in town, but it's where we should start looking for sure. But
yeah,
I mean, so it becomes, but back in the 80s, we didn't know any of this. And most scientists thought that there was a really good chance that Earth was the only site for life in the universe, because it's so difficult when they start studying how life arises. It's so incredible. I mean, it just beats all the odds. How non-living matter, non-organic matter can somehow self-organize into life is one of the great mysteries, right? And it makes sense, if you didn't know that 1 out of 5 stars has an Earth-like planet around it, then why wouldn't we be the only game in town? But now, with more knowledge, with the James Webb Telescope out there and information coming in every day, it becomes more and more plausible. And at some point, we're going to discover a planet with clear signs of industry. We're going to say the spectrum of this planet, the gases that we're looking at, can only be made from an industrial process. And then we're off to the races. And that might be how it's going to unfold.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. I'm excited. I know summer's right around the corner. I'm wearing hoodies right now, and I won't be, because it's starting to get hot. And I am excited because I just learned about Chubbies. Chubbies is a lifestyle apparel brand that makes every moment feel like a vacation. So they say that fashion is an expression of one's character, so why not let the world know that you're down for a good time? I need swim trunks. That's what I need. I need swim trunks. I need comfortable shorts, and that's what Chubbies has. They have all of it. And I got big thighs, guys. I got big thighs. So I needed shorts that I'm like, okay, you know what? I want to look good in these. I want to walk into my house, I want to put them on, and I did this, and I said, it's all about what my wife thinks. And my wife went, whoa, new shorts, nice. And I was like, I'm in. And I like the old kind of Mike Tyson shorts, for me. And that's what I had. They had them. They had those kind of like black shorts. I liked it. I like the black colors. I like blue colors. They have every type of color, and that's what I like about Chubbies. They got a different variety of high-quality men's apparel, so it's great. The stretchy shorts, all of it. Comfortable shorts, the best. So for a limited time, Chubbies is going to give our listeners 20% off your order with our exclusive code. Use that code DTE at chubbyshorts.com. Again, that's DTE at chubbyshorts.com. You will enjoy these. You really will. And I think that it's high quality, and it's summer. It's right around the corner. I know everybody's looking for shorts, bathing suits, all that. This is where you go. All right. Thanks for watching. Go get some shorts. Perfect Jean. Have you guys... I've been talking about the Perfect Jean recently. If you've been watching this, you know that I've been talking about them. I was wearing them the whole time in New York. God, I really, so comfortable. Really, really comfortable. So if you didn't know, the good news about it, and I like to be classy here, Perfect Jean has uncrushed over 350,000 men's nuts, and yours are next. It's not just another pair of your stiff cardboard jeans, and they're definitely not your pancake butt sweatpants or joggers. They make you look great. You got perfect fitting jeans that are stretchy as a kangaroo's pouch, and they hug your ass. That's in the right place. You like that? I do too. The special denim fabric is very soft And doesn't matter if you're thick, you're short, anything in between. Perfect Gene has you covered. It's got 6 fits from skinny to thick, waist sizes from 26 to 50, and lengths from 26 to 38. They got the perfect size just for you. So trust us when we say these truly are the effing perfect jeans. Once you try them, you're never going to go back. So if you go to theperfectgene.nyc and you use that code BigThing15, you get 15% off. That's right. You can just Google the perfect gene and use that code BigThing15. I love these things, guys. I've been since I got involved with them, they signed on for longer because I've been wearing them. I talk about how much I love them, and I hope that you guys do too. As I saw a bunch of people that were signing up to it, and they said they were pretty comfortable. So check them out and let me know what you think. You know? Yeah, I mean, I think that's the major question I've been asking kind of every day is how this is simple, because there is a level obviously of frustration that comes along with this too, where I mean, and it is almost like unfair to me to be frustrated because look at I'm sure that you've had your level of frustration over covering it or studying it for 15 years.
Yeah.
But it's just like when you get to a place and from jumping into it last year and looking at here's this public hearings where you have public hearings of an intelligence officer, 2 pilots sitting there, and you're like, whoa, what's about to come out? And then the Soul Foundation has their videos, and like they were just counting on that Schumer Rounds bill to pass in its form that it was in, and then it gets gutted, and then it seems like there was all these big announcements that were supposed to happen in 2024, and things have kind of been here, and then that Arrow report happens, but you listen to everybody behind the scenes, and it seems like there will be more public hearings. Carl Nell is pretty convinced that the basically the reveal of alien or NHI to the public will be by 2030, I think he said. So let me start with that. Do you actually think that there will be another public hearing coming up soon? And do you think that there will be some stuff revealed more than what we got last year?
I think the trend is for this to go away.
Yeah.
And if another public hearing happens, that will be the goal. You know, the goal is to put this back to sleep. And and it's, you know, to a large part up to the public to not let that happen, you know? And that's why being out here, doing your show, spreading the word, thinking about it, keeping it alive in the public consciousness is important, because like I said, you know, there's nothing to gain right now for the government or the military to come out and say, you know, for the military to come out and say, yeah, they look like they're extraterrestrial visitors and we have absolutely no way of controlling them. They can come and go as they please. They can park themselves over a lake and take hundreds of gallons of water. They can abduct people and take sperm and eggs from them. God knows what they're doing there, because we don't really know. Like the military's nothing to gain from saying anything like that, right? And the government's got nothing to gain to govern a populace that knows that they're not the only intelligent creatures in the ballpark. You know, where then you start asking questions like, well, what it does is it reframes humanity as one race instead of all of the divisions and the identity buckets that society, the government wants to put us in to get us all kind of fighting, right? We've been doing this since the beginning of time, divide and conquer. It doesn't help the narrative, right, at all. So the goal is always to put this back, to put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? I don't think that's going to happen. And because it's reality, sooner or later, we as a human society are going to come to terms with reality. If it wasn't reality, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But it happens to be reality. So whether it's next year, 10 years from now, 40 years from now, sooner or later, you know, most of us are going to realize, you know, we're going to come to grips, come to terms, wake up to reality. But that doesn't help and here's a question for you.
Sure.
So, like, if I was just a normal guy and if I didn't know anything about the subject, I would think that this is a stoner conversation.
Right.
Well, okay, aliens. Okay, so they do. Let's say they do. And they're coming down here and they're abducting cows, and
Yeah.
they're doing what freaking out old ladies. So what? I
Right.
mean, what's the point? What does it mean for me? How does it change my life? How does it change our life?
Yeah.
Uh,
My answer to that question would be with being able to learn what I've learned over whatever it might be. I said, well, the question is how it changes your life is what they're hiding from us in the actual information to it. The question is, does this stuff that we, whether it's craft that we've recovered, where there's knowledge that we've gained, is it stuff that can change our society? Is it stuff that we don't have to rely on that's potentially poisoning us and that we're able to
right,
live on, or sustainable energy? It's stuff that will benefit you tremendously if we know that we can change. It's like the thing that can
right,
in the way that when the wheel was discovered, how society changed, right? Well,
right.
society's going to change because now we have technology. We don't need that gas. We don't need it. And that's probably another reason why these companies, if they do know that, they're probably like, no, don't tell them that, because then they're not going to need us anymore. And
Absolutely, and it makes it real. No, that's a great answer. The technology that alien visitation represents is game changing,
right,
right? And I'll add to that, the other game changer has to do with how we organize our society. How the sort of the Western civilization paradigm that
yeah,
has developed over the years and is what it is today. The power structures, the blind, the willful blindness that most humans sort of have to put up with on a daily basis in
right,
order to function. I
right,
mean, that look at where that's got us. I mean, we're in the middle of, or at the beginning of, several crises, a poly crises
hmm,
that are coming down, from climate change to the economy, to the old socialism versus capitalism. So, there's a lot. This stuff is kind of, the crack is kind of falling apart.
yeah, it is. It's for sure. And I think that that's why I do think, I will say that I think the reason why I think public hearings, I don't disagree with you that there's going to be maybe a pushback to try to silence it, but I don't think that necessarily is going to come from if the hearing does happen. I think it's a reason why they're trying to fight from the hearing to happen, because I think of some of the people that are fighting the fight right now, whether it's Burchett, Moskowitz, Luna, AOC, all these people that are fighting for it to happen. I think that if they get there, they're going to be, they're going to be pushing for more answers. But the main thing that has to happen, in my opinion, is that as valuable as both Fravor and Graves and of course Grush were,
Yeah,
these 40 plus whistleblowers that they have that they're talking about, you've got to have someone there that said, I touched the craft, I worked on the craft, I have this
sure.
knowledge of this. It's like that's what's going to move the needle forward. Am I wrong?
Well, we had that. We had that during the sort of mock congressional hearings that were held twice. I think one was in 2001, the other was in 2011.
Okay.
Stephen Greer brought these guys together, and he brought people in who testified, who that had actually handled alien technology. So we have that. You can go online and go on YouTube, and you can listen to these testimonies. And at the end of all of their testimonies, they said, "And I will testify and swear before Congress that this is true. Should I be called to do that?" It's great that we have new people, and they should, and we should. Of course,
Yeah.
we should. And I think that every little bit helps. But for me, and I think all that's important. But for relying on government institutions to kind of tell us, what's real, that'll move the needle for people who don't think about this subject at all.
Well,
Um,
getting into mainstream media is what because I do think the people that you said, that I think you said it very well, that just kind of go about their day and it just kind of the blinders on or whatnot. I think that as much as we don't want to rely on the mainstream media, that
It
when
has an impact.
a
Yeah.
major impact when people sit down and they're done with their work day and they sit down for dinner, they put the TV on, and the first story is something about these hearings. It's now in their mind, and more people are talking about, what I saw in the news last night? They did this thing about UFOs. Did you see
But
that?
less and less people are actually turning on the tube to get their news. I mean, the mainstream media is like floundering, man.
Yeah.
You see the numbers for CNN, and I'm not saying people don't watch it. There's a few, and
It's
they
not what it
still
was.
have it.
It's not what it was. You're
It's
right.
not what it was, and it's never going to be what it was unless
Right.
it becomes state media and we turn into a bunch of commies. Then then then
Right.
we've got bigger problems than the
Right.
mainstream media.
No, I hear what you're saying. I want to turn the car right for a second, and I want to ask you. I got two movie questions for you. One is going to be UFO related, the other one not. But the first one, Steven Spielberg. They just mentioned
Yeah,
that he's doing another UFO movie, and
so
obviously when he
cool.
worked, it's so cool. When he did Close Encounters, he had both Hynek and Jacques Vallée were on.
Oh,
Yep, they were there. He's done, whether it's ET, whether he's done War of the Worlds, but he's doing it again. And he did an interview recently, and he talked about he's very well read up on it too. When you hear this,
absolutely. Oh
very
yeah.
well
No.
on
And
it, like
he had, I mean, he did his homework with Close Encounters.
he did, but they were asking him about the stuff that recently, and he's talking about the Schumer and Rounds bill. He's talking about he's read up on it. So do you think that with the Spielberg movie that he does, and it's supposed to come out in 2026, you think we're going to see a little bit more of the kind of the reality of what's been going on lately with his movie, or do you think that he's going to go more into the fantastical Spielberg element of it, or a mixture of both?
Yeah, it's probably going to be a mixture of both. But I think that there was such a kernel of truth with Close Encounters.
Yep.
And if he's announcing that he's going to do a movie about UFOs, I think we're going to see a kernel of truth there. I think that could really help turn the tide. If it's if it goes over, if it's
Right.
accepted in the right way. I think that stories are, we're a society that tells stories to each other. It's the backbone of our society. It's the backbone of society itself.
Yep.
Sitting around the campfire and telling stories is how society was formed. So we put great stock in it.
Yeah.
That's why the CIA and the government has had an inordinate amount of control in telling the stories, or in which stories get told in our society. They're very careful with certain subjects that the right message goes out. I don't think that this movie is going to be any exception. I think they're going to be all over it. So we're not going to learn anything that we're not supposed to know.
I'm curious because he just produced the show on Netflix, the Encounter show, which covered the Zimbabwe case. It covered a bunch of different things. Ones that I had heard of before, but it was good that him and Boardwalk Pictures both covered it on Netflix. But I'm crossing my fingers that you're going to show up in this Spielberg movie. I got to tell you, I want to see it now.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for Spielberg to call. Wouldn't that be great?
Especially
I'm a huge fan of Spielberg. I think he's one of the greatest filmmakers of our age or any other. Absolutely a treasure.
But as much as half kidding on that, but I say because I also think it's important to have people that are very much into the situation and know it. I think it would be very beneficial if there's a role. It'd be great to have you.
We would want to see we'd want to see the truth. We'd want to be able to believe a movie, a UFO movie that wasn't grounded in the reality of the subject would be very disappointing.
Yeah, especially if he knows with knowing what he does. The second question that I have to ask, because I would be mad at myself if I didn't, with all the stuff that Marvel's doing with the multiverse and the things. I know that you were when you were initially approached for the Punisher, you were hesitant about it, and then you became a fan and you joined in, and obviously you found a love for the character and played it so well. Was there ever any conversations with the new MCU Marvel with the multiverse for you to come back, make a return, do anything? Has there been any of those talks?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. You know, I did my little short film called Dirty Laundry
Yeah, I
on
loved it.
YouTube.
I loved it.
And I'm really proud of that. I sort of did what I wanted to do with the character, and love love. I have a soft spot for those kind of characters. You know, they really peaked in the 70s.
Yeah.
It's sort of a take on the you know
Anti-hero.
the Western, you know, the lone anti-hero.
Mhm. Yeah. Well,
Outside of society, but the society depends on those guys to keep us safe. I love that kind of stuff. The Searchers.
yeah,
John Wayne was one of my favorite films of all time.
yeah, you could tell that was definitely an inspiration in the way that you approached the character. I thought it was, because I loved Castle growing up in the comics, and I thought you played it very well. So I was just curious about that. But when before we started, I noticed that you had that hat on with SpaceX, and we talked about what Musk was doing, and you had mentioned you're a fan of kind of what he was doing, and I had mentioned to you beforehand off air. I said I like the approach, but I don't like what he's been saying lately when asked about. He's been so adamant in saying that there's no alien life and this.
Right.
Do you think that's a, hey, we're going to give you this contract, but if anybody asks you anything,
Yeah.
you say, no.
Well, I can tell you that I think that Musk doesn't want to put his eggs in any other basket than the human race. In other words, it's up to us. I think one of the pitfalls of studying UFOs and visiting aliens is thinking that they're going to bail us out somehow.
Right.
You know, that they'd hand us a free energy device. Stephen Greer talks about this. There's a big movement of, you know, if aliens, if we recognize that they exist and they came out of the closet, then they could help us overcome some of the pitfalls that we're finding, you know, or clean up our environment, give us some clean energy, maybe a cure for cancer.
Yeah.
I think all of these things would be disruptive to the point of chaos, because we have to figure it out ourselves. If we don't figure it out ourselves, then we're going to be beholden in some way, shape, or form to an alien intelligence that's going to take the role of patriarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're a patriarchal society, you know, and that has good points and bad points. But we would place that patriarchy onto aliens right away. It's the biggest argument of why this shouldn't come out of the closet, and why when people say we're not ready, in my opinion, this is what they mean. We're not ready. We're not standing on our own 2 feet yet. We would use alien intelligence as a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first thing we think, you know. Yeah. Now, if we recognize that visiting aliens exist, and obviously they're, you know, not filling up their UFO at the Shell station,
right.
So how did they do it? And asking those questions and knowing that it's possible, right? Like birds fly. The Wright brothers wouldn't have tried over and over and over and over again to get that damn airplane up in the air if they weren't walking outside and seeing those damn birds flying around up there.
Right.
They knew it was possible. It could be done.
Right.
And if we know that it can be done, anti-gravity or some clean source of energy, if we have the evidence that it can be done, then in my opinion, we can figure it out, and we should figure it out. We should not get handed any gifts. You know?
Well, I mean, don't you think that we almost, like, where we were, depending on what you believe, but like we kind of were handed a gift if you believe that some of the ships that have been crashed were given as gifts, and the T. Thomas Brown,
absolutely, and they've been kept secret. You know, the aliens didn't give the gifts to the military; they just landed them out in the desert and said, "Go for it." You know, the military took over and hid them away, and said, "We better not tell anybody about this." And there's certainly an economic reason to do that. There's all kinds of reasons. There's a weaponized, you know, if we could figure out how to weaponize this, we could take over the world.
Right.
And we certainly don't want to, step on the toes of big oil. who we, have a very serious relationship with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons to hide it, but that's up to us. That's
Right.
up to us to change the rules.
Do you think that with because I've had like Jesse Michaels on the show, and we've talked a lot about his T. Thomas Brown stuff that he covered. I talked to Ashton Forbes about I mean, I don't know how much you followed him and the stuff that he's been doing with the MH370, the Malaysia.
No, tell me.
Have you
What's
seen
that?
So the Malaysia flight, the Malaysia fight that disappeared.
Oh
back
yeah. I've seen those videos. Are they real? I can't tell.
So if you talk to Ashton Forbes, he's very much convinced that they're real. But he doesn't believe that it's alien. What he believes is that it's the United States government who has anti-gravity technology, and that these orbs were. And then there's people who have said, no, we've debunked those videos. We've done that. And Ashton Forbes has had. If you follow Ashton Forbes, he's fastly growing and becoming more of a presence of someone who I had him on the show. He talked about it, and I don't know what to believe as far as that goes. He makes a very compelling argument. But there's something to the fact. Do I believe that we've been working on anti-gravity stuff?
Absolutely. There's no doubt that we've been working on it since 47 when Roswell happened. I fully believe that Roswell was a real event. And there's good evidence that we've actually recovered ships before that.
Right.
But we've been collecting these things, and yes, of course, we're trying to figure out anti-gravity, but it comes down to Richard Dolan's breakaway civilization. So what happens is if one small sector of society has information that the other one doesn't, and that information represents more power, then that breakaway civilization will become more and more powerful and more separate from mainstream society. That means that academia won't get the funding or the permission to go down certain routes. Okay. So if they've sort of figured out the basics of anti-gravity, and they kind of know where general relativity breaks down, then they can guide academia away from making these similar discoveries. And that creates an artificial ceiling of suppression over mainstream society, because now we know what we don't want.
Right.
We don't want them to have. Okay. And so, and I believe that there's good evidence that suggests that is indeed the case, that academia is being guided, suppressed, walled off, and that there are certain conversations and avenues that are strongly discouraged. Now, if you want to go, if you're a physicist and you're really bright, and you've spent a lot of money on school, and you're working for a laboratory, and you're making a living, and you've got a family, you can go down these roads on your own time. But if you tried to do that through the official channels of academia, you'd be homeless and broke.
It's absolutely true. And it's funny because you mentioned earlier, I was lucky enough about a month ago, I had Avi Loeb on the show, and we talked for a bit, and it's very similar to what you were talking about, where he's working with Galilei, he's working on that project, and I said, I was so curious in how he pitched that to Harvard to do that. And it's more about the way that he pitched it, looking into the sky and studying the sky. And of course, Harvard wants to study the sky, but when you start putting it in fact that we're looking for aliens, we're looking for NHI, that's when it starts to get trickier for people, right? And I always forget, and I hate to do it because he was so monumental, from Harvard that did from the Zimbabwe case, who was the
John Mack.
Thank you. I said John Mack. So John Mack was the other one, because John Mack presents it, and he's almost like they want to out him out.
Yeah, they tried to oust him right away.
Right. So it is a matter of like how it's presented. So I couldn't.
Absolutely. Avi has to be careful in how he presents, to be, in order to get the funding. And he's the bridge, I mean, I have so much admiration for the guy, because he's actually straddling two worlds, and that is not easy to do. And he's found an entry point.
Yeah.
He's found an entry point where he can actually utilize the mainstream academia to his advantage to study what ultimately is going to add to the evidence that we have for extraterrestrial vehicles.
Right. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is really cool. What also is pretty cool is that Contact in the Desert, as you mentioned earlier. Tell me a little bit more about it. Tell me how you were approached about doing it, and ultimately what it entails.
Well, there's a lot of different conventions that deal with aliens, and there's all kinds of different sort of slants that they take. There's the Conscious Life Expo, which deals with, there's a lot of crystals and consciousness stuff, and there's certainly they certainly have a lot of professionals there. But I like Contact because it's got 60 or 70 of the world's leading UFO researchers. It has PhDs, academics, scientists. Avi Loeb's going to be there giving us some information. So it's grounded in it's grounded in the science a little more than some of the other conventions. So I'm really excited to be there. I'll be there on Sunday. My talk is at 12:30 on Sunday, June 2nd. And I'm really excited to sort of share what I've learned over the last 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, if it's people got a little bit of a preview here today, and I mean, it's absolutely it's great to know that you're out there doing this also, Thomas. And I want to thank you for coming out here, being on the show, and I hope to be able to talk to you again about it, because I'm sure we're gonna have a lot more to talk about.
Hey, I'd like that a lot. I'm editing the book, and we'll see how that goes. But it'll be out in the next few months, so we should have another conversation for sure. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Same, absolutely same. So make sure, guys, if you're able to check out Thomas when he's doing Contact in the Desert, he's going to let us know about the book. Obviously, such a tremendous body of work. I didn't even get to bring up Boogie Nights, for God's sakes. But that's all this and more. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Thomas. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right, so there you have it. I told you, man, he was so educated on the topic. I mean, like he said, he's been following it for 15 years or whatnot, and I just really had a great time talking with him. I felt like I was just sitting back, grabbing a beer with somebody and just talking about this situation and like certain things. And like I've told you guys many times over, even when I mentioned John Mack, I couldn't remember the name. He knew it like immediately. He's like, "Yeah, that's who you meant. You mean John Mack?" I was like, "Yep, that's exactly who I meant." And I liked and I think we both respected the conversation where at the end of it, he was just like, I like talking to people who know what they're talking about. And like I said, I'm learning. Well, I've been really following this thing with all the names and everything too for like the last year, as where a lot of you guys have been following this for so long, know all the names, know all these things. And I am humbled when you guys are watching this show to hear the thoughts and the fact that you can come in and I think it is, as I told Thomas, I think it's very important that someone like himself is out there talking about it too. I think it brings more eyeballs on it. And I'm curious to how many more people. I know Dan Aykroyd is somebody, as I said, Paul Giamatti, Thomas Jane, and I'm sure that there's a bigger list. I'm sure that there is, and I wonder as this thing goes on and on and on if more people will come out and start talking about it. But I hope you enjoyed the interview. I know I had a really good time talking to Thomas, so I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear the comments. I want all it. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. It's very important to do so. If you stumbled upon here, you just saw this interview and you said, "Oh, what the hell is this? Who's this guy?" Every Tuesday we do UAP Tuesday, and we have interviews. We've had on Avi Loeb, Jesse Michaels, Tim Gallaudet, Steve Bassett, Danny Sheehan. The list goes on and on and on. We're trying to get more people on here as we are building it up, but we need you guys to keep clicking that button, keep commenting. So thanks for joining us here again. I got the Down to Earth UAP channel, which is our daily news channel. You can check that out. Thanks to our sponsors. If you want to help out the show and you're able to do that, please go into the link in the description. Go ahead, check that out. It helps more than you can possibly imagine. So thank you again, and we will see you. Well, listen, if you subscribe, we'll see you tomorrow. If you're waiting around for the UAP, we'll see you on Tuesday. All right. Thanks, and thanks to Thomas Jane. See you later.